My name is Victoria, and for as long as I can remember, I was always the girl people overlooked. I grew up in a small suburb outside of Columbus, Ohio. My dad left when I was 6, and my mom worked double shifts just to keep the lights on. There were no summer camps or dance classes, just school, chores, and eventually, part-time jobs. Amanda lived just 5 houses down. She and I were inseparable as kids, playing hopscotch on the sidewalk, building pillow forts in our living rooms. But as we got older, something changed. Amanda started pulling away. She had new clothes every season, the latest iPhone, and a brand new car when she turned 16. Meanwhile, I was wearing thrift store jeans and walking to my job at the diner after school. By sophomore year, she barely spoke to me. When she did, it was mostly subtle jabs. "You're working again? That's admirable." Or, "College isn't for everyone." But the one line that stuck with me the most came during our senior year. I had just applied for a full-ride scholarship. I told Amanda I was nervous but hopeful. She laughed, flipping her perfect hair over her shoulder, and said, "Victoria, you're not scholarship material, just admit it. You're jealous because no one's ever picked you." That night I cried. Not because I believed her, but because part of me feared she was right. All my life I'd been told to be realistic. Don't aim too high, just survive. Still, something in me refused to quit. I didn't get that scholarship. But I did get into a local community college. I worked nights and weekends at a grocery store to afford tuition. While Amanda posted photos from frat parties at her expensive private university, I was grinding through classes and saving every penny. No one noticed me, but that was fine. I wasn't doing it for attention. I was doing it to prove, maybe not to Amanda, but to myself, that I was more than what people assumed. That I had something real inside me. Something that couldn't be measured by popularity or money or how many likes your Instagram photo got. That was the beginning, the quiet fire no one saw. Yet, the community college I got into wasn't prestigious. No ivy-covered buildings or famous alumni, just rows of aging classrooms and vending machines that barely worked. But to me it was a start, a chance to change the script life had handed me. I threw myself into my studies. I worked nights at a grocery store stocking shelves, then headed to campus in the mornings running on black coffee and willpower. Some nights I cried from exhaustion. But I never considered giving up. I still remember the day Amanda posted a photo of herself on a yacht, holding a champagne glass with the caption, "Some of us are just made for more." It stung, but I didn't let it stop me. By the end of my first year, I had straight A's. One of my professors, Dr. Lane, noticed how hard I was working and encouraged me to apply for the honors transfer program. I didn't think I'd get in, but I did. That program allowed me to transfer to a state university with a partial scholarship. It still wasn't glamorous, but it was progress. Meanwhile, Amanda had switched majors twice and dropped out of her sorority after some drama I didn't care to follow. Her life seemed shiny on the outside, but something felt hollow underneath. At the university, I finally started feeling like I belonged. I joined a student entrepreneurship club, not because I had a business idea, but because I was curious. That curiosity led to a small internship at a local startup. It paid next to nothing, but I said yes anyway. It was the first time I was surrounded by people who believed in building things, not just buying them. The CEO was only in his early 30s, sharp, focused, and unexpectedly kind. He didn't care where I came from, he cared about how I thought. For the first time, I felt like my ideas mattered. Amanda and I didn't talk during those years. She still posted perfect photos, and I still lived in a shared apartment with 3 other broke girls and a fridge that leaked. But I didn't envy her anymore. Because every step I took, even the messy ones, felt like my own. No one handed me anything. And maybe that's what made it all mean more. My internship turned into something much bigger than I expected. At first, I was just helping out, organizing spreadsheets, answering emails, taking notes in meetings. But I paid attention. I asked questions. I stayed late. I started understanding how things worked, the product, the market, the clients, the stress. I didn't have a business degree or a fancy resume, but I had drive, and that started to matter. 6 months in, the CEO called me into his office. He told me they were opening a junior project coordinator role and asked if I wanted it. I said yes before he even finished the sentence. It wasn't glamorous, It came with long hours, tight deadlines, and more responsibility than I thought I could handle. But I figured it out. I learned fast. I made mistakes, owned them, and got better. People started trusting me. After graduation, I was offered a full-time position. I didn't even hesitate. While I was climbing quietly, Amanda's updates were becoming strange. The parties got smaller, the captions more cryptic. She was no longer at her university. Rumor had it she'd dropped out. Some said she was living back home. It felt surreal. The girl who used to smirk at my clearance rack shoes now seemed lost. But I didn't gloat. I couldn't. I was too busy trying to prove I belonged in rooms filled with Ivy League grads and confident men in expensive suits. I had imposter syndrome so loud it followed me home some nights. But every time I doubted myself, I thought about that night Amanda told me no one would ever pick me. And I'd whisper to myself, then I'll pick myself. A few years later, I moved to a larger firm, one that was scaling fast and looking for people who could get things done. I led my first real project and it exceeded expectations. Then another. Then another. I started gaining a reputation for being efficient, calm under pressure, and weirdly good at turning chaos into structure. I wasn't flashy, I just worked hard, treated people well, and showed up. Slowly but surely, I was becoming someone people trusted to lead. And somewhere in the back of my mind, I remembered Amanda's voice calling me jealous. I didn't feel jealousy anymore. I felt fire. And that fire kept me going. It started as a late-night conversation over takeout and too much coffee. I was sitting with two former coworkers, Jasmine and Lila, both women I respected deeply. We had all worked together at the same fast-growing tech company, and while the place was exciting, it was also exhausting. The leadership was chaotic, priorities changed weekly, and burnout was everywhere. That night, we asked the question we'd all been silently thinking for months. What if we built something better? It felt insane at first. None of us came from money. We weren't the startup bros you see on magazine covers. But we had experience. We understood operations, clients, the gaps in the market, and most importantly, we trusted each other. We didn't quit our jobs right away. For months, we met on weekends and evenings. We drafted a business plan, pitched to local mentors, and built a prototype from scratch. We poured every spare dollar we had into it. Finally, when we secured a small angel investment from a woman-led venture fund, we made the leap. We launched a tech startup focused on streamlining operations for small service businesses, salons, gyms, dog groomers. People often ignored by Silicon Valley. And it worked! Slowly, clients came, word spread, we hustled like mad, running sales calls from our kitchens, answering support tickets at midnight, and updating the product constantly based on feedback. The growth wasn't explosive, but it was steady, real, earned. Within 2 years, we had 14 employees and a second round of funding. I was named CEO partly because I had the most cross-sectional experience, but also because I kept the team grounded when things got chaotic. People outside the company started noticing me. I was asked to speak on panels, mentor younger women in tech, even advise small incubators. But I never forgot where I started. Every time I walked into our office, bright, open, full of energy, I felt the contrast between this version of my life and the girl who once stocked soup cans until 2 a.m. I never imagined I'd be here. I didn't come from privilege. I didn't have connections. I wasn't chosen. I built this. With grit. With women I trusted and with a fire that had never gone out. And somewhere out there, Amanda still hadn't shown up in my life, again. But that was about to change. It was a Tuesday afternoon. I had just wrapped up a Zoom call with one of our partners when my assistant knocked on the office door. "Hey, Victoria," she said, holding a printed resume. "One of the candidates for the client success manager role just arrived early. Thought you might want to look this over." I took the paper, not expecting much. Then I saw the name. Amanda Wilkins. My chest tightened. For a second, I thought it had to be a coincidence. But the email address confirmed it. And then, as I looked up through the glass wall of my office, I saw her. She was sitting in the waiting area, same perfect posture, same sleek hair, but something was different. Her expression wasn't smug or confident. It was cautious, nervous even. Amanda didn't recognize me at first when she walked into the interview room. She extended her hand politely. Hi, I'm Amanda. Thank you for having me. I stood up slowly, smiled, and shook her hand. It's been a long time, I said. There was a pause. Then her eyes widened. Victoria? Oh my God. Silence. She sat down slowly, visibly thrown off. I kept the conversation professional, walking through her resume, asking standard questions. But internally, I was reeling. Her resume wasn't bad. In fact, it was surprisingly humble. Years of bouncing between jobs, some gaps, some freelance work. She didn't mention her fancy university. She didn't brag. She looked tired. For a moment, I felt sorry for her, and then confused by that pity. This was the girl who once laughed at my ambition, who told me I'd never be chosen. And now she was sitting across from me, applying for a job at my company. Life has a wicked sense of irony. Amanda tried to keep it together, but her voice cracked a few times. She looked at the walls, the logo, the framed awards. Then she looked at me. You built this? She asked, almost in disbelief. I nodded. With two amazing women. There was a long pause. She bit her lip, and then said quietly, I didn't think I guess I was wrong about a lot of things. I didn't reply. Not out of spite, but because I didn't know what to say. The interview ended politely. I told her we'd be in touch. As she walked out, I watched her shoulders slump slightly. The Amanda I remembered always walked like the world belonged to her. But this version? She looked like she was just hoping someone would let her in. The days after the interview left me strangely unsettled. Amanda hadn't been the girl I remembered. There was no sharp edge in her tone, no fake smile. Just a quiet kind of vulnerability I hadn't expected. I caught myself replaying the interview in my head more times than I'd like to admit. My co-founders, Jasmine and Lila, asked how it went. I told them the truth. She's changed, I said. I don't know if it's enough. But it's real. They both trusted my judgment. The final hiring decision was mine. A week later, I invited Amanda back for a second round, not because I wanted to make a statement, but because I believed in giving people the chance to grow. She was nervous, but more open this time. She talked about failure, about losing her sense of direction, about how she used to believe success was something you could wear, photograph, perform. And now? I asked. Amanda looked down, then said, Now I just want to be useful. I want to work hard for something real. Something in me softened. I knew what it was like to be dismissed, to feel like you had to prove your worth from zero. I didn't owe Amanda anything. But maybe that was the point. I could offer grace because I had survived what she never expected I would. Still, part of me braced for the past to come clawing back. And it did. Later that week, as we were wrapping up the final decision, Amanda stopped by my office. She hesitated in the doorway. I wanted to say something before you decide. I looked up. She took a breath. Back in high school, I said some awful things. I thought I was better than you, smarter, prettier, more important. And when you tried, I called it jealousy because I didn't know how to deal with someone like you. Someone like me? I asked gently. She nodded. Someone who doesn't give up, who doesn't need attention to feel strong. I hated that. Because deep down, I wished I had it. She didn't cry, she just looked honest. I didn't give her an answer that day. I thanked her for her honesty and told her I'd think it over. But inside, I already knew. I wouldn't hire Amanda out of guilt or revenge. I'd hire her because maybe, just maybe, she was finally ready to become someone new. And I was strong enough now not to fear the past, but to transform it. Amanda started working with us the following month. We didn't make a big deal out of it. She joined a team like any other hire, no fanfare, no special treatment. I made sure she was trained properly, paired with one of our strongest team leads, and given the same expectations we had for everyone. In the beginning, she struggled. She second-guessed herself constantly, apologized too often, and hesitated to take initiative. It was clear she hadn't worked in a truly collaborative team before, where listening mattered more than speaking, where ego didn't win you points. But she showed up, every day, on time, quietly taking notes, learning the tools, asking thoughtful questions. She wasn't trying to impress anymore. She was trying to grow. There was one afternoon, a few weeks in, when she stayed behind after a team debrief. She lingered by the whiteboard as the others left, then turned to me. "I know I still have a lot to prove," she said. "And I don't expect you to forget who I used to be. But I want to be better. I need to be." I looked at her and saw someone who'd finally let the armor fall. Not the perfect girl from high school, not the Instagram version of herself, but someone real, humbled, human. "Then keep showing up," I said. And she did. Over the next 6 months, Amanda became one of the most reliable people on the team. She wasn't the loudest or the flashiest, but she followed through. She owned her mistakes. She supported others without seeking credit. One day, I overheard her coaching a new hire with a level of kindness and clarity that made me pause. It wasn't the voice of someone trying to prove something anymore. It was someone who had found quiet confidence. Later that week, she dropped by my office with a cup of coffee. No agenda, just a thank you. "For not writing me off," she said. "For seeing something I didn't even see in myself." I smiled. "You're the one who chose to change, Amanda. I just gave you a space to do it." And it hit me then. Maybe strength wasn't always about climbing higher or proving people wrong. Maybe sometimes strength was choosing not to let the past define the future. Some mornings I still catch myself staring out my office window, coffee in hand, wondering how I got here. It's not about the title, or the corner office, or the funding rounds and press interviews. It's the quiet moments that stay with me. Like when a young woman on our team nervously pitches her first idea and I see a version of myself in her eyes. Or when Amanda walks into the office, greets her coworkers with humility and grace, and no one would ever guess who she used to be. She's not the villain in this story. Not anymore. Growth doesn't happen in a straight line, and redemption rarely comes wrapped in a big speech or a dramatic gesture. Sometimes it comes in the form of someone quietly showing up every day, willing to learn, to listen, to do the work. People ask me all the time if it's weird being Amanda's boss. And the truth is, it was. At first. But now I don't see the girl who once laughed at me in high school. I see someone who hit rock bottom, chose to rise differently, and had the courage to face the person she once hurt. I never needed revenge. I needed peace. And peace came not from watching her fall, but from knowing I didn't. I think that's what real strength looks like. When you no longer have to shout your worth. When you can lift others, even the ones who once looked down on you, and still stand tall. So yes, she once said I was jealous. Now, I'm her boss. But more than that, I'm proud I never became like her.